Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday, and welcome to my later than usual AEW Dynamite review. Hello, let me know if you can hear me and stuff. Anyone that's out there in the chat, thank you for joining me here on a Sunday. Not the time that I intended to do this review, but circumstances. So, how's everyone doing? I'm pretty good. I went to an 80s party last night. That was really fun. Got to get dressed up and stuff, but I left pretty early. It was at my friend's house, and she only lives like 5 minutes away. So I left because I knew that this morning I had to be on here on YouTube reviewing AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, which I was in attendance for, allegedly. So we're going to get into that. Hello to everyone in the chat. It's so nice when I'm getting ready to do these streams and I see people like Maria and Darren and Fernando already there saying hi. So hi to all of you and thank you for joining me. So I think there's a lot to get into. And I think I should probably start with my Grand Slam experience and everything that kind of happened on social media when I was there and when I was after, and maybe kind of just explaining myself because it went like a little crazy, and I haven't been on X Twitter now for a couple of days. So I just got really done with it. So I don't know. I guess I should get into that before I get into my review, because it all kind of is part of the reason why I'm doing the review on Sunday, because I had to watch Grand Slam again. So I watched it yesterday to actually see it, because I felt like when I watched it yesterday, I didn't feel like I was present there. Like a lot of the shows that I go to, I will always watch them when I get home, because you want to hear the commentary, see how it came across on TV, and you can, remember things or feel like you were there. But I didn't. Watching back Grand Slam, I felt totally detached from it. So I guess I can get into that, and maybe if you have any questions about stuff regarding that, you can put it in the chat and I can answer it. So basically, I got to Grand Slam not long before. I've never been to Arthur Ashe Stadium before, and it's really huge. Not just the stadium, but the grounds of it. So I got there, and I had a media ticket that I had applied for, how I always do, and always receive them. So I had to collect that from the box office. There was a pretty big queue at the box office to collect the tickets. So that actually took a really long time and kind of took away from it just took a while to get into the venue. And then from the box office, there was quite a long walk to the actual stadium. And then when you got into the actual stadium, it was an even longer walk to where my seats were. So by the time I got into the stadium, they were playing Nigel's music. So I just went out to the first, through the first door of one of the sections. I think it was say 100 and section 140 or something. And then just walked the whole way around inside so I could actually see to where I was sat. So I was sat in section 126, and I was seat number 1, row E, I think it was. So I was right at the end, and then quite near the front bit of that section. So I got to my seat. And as you probably saw from the photos on Twitter, I was right beside where they had cut off about a third of the stadium that they didn't sell the tickets for. And they'd done this with like a big black curtain. And then I later realized that they had a big screen up. So anyway, had this big black curtain. So then right next to me are all the empty seats. And then I can see like just the bit where the wrestlers stand before they come out to make their entrances. So I can see that. And I can see this black curtain. And then I can see the ring, right? So I can't see any of the entrances or anything. And I was sat there and was like, this like can't actually, like, is this actually where we're sitting? And I checked my ticket multiple times, like just to make sure. And in front of me, I'm pretty sure were the boys and girls from the wrestling club, who I will say, like, those kids had a really, really great time, but they were put in this section too. So a lot of them were in front of me and like had the same viewpoint. And when the Bryan like Nigel match was going on, that my row filled up with other people that were from the media, right? So like Shawn was there. Shawn was up a couple of seats across from me, other people from Fightful. And so it was like, yeah, this is the actual media section. And I found that like the Bryan Nigel match just really hard to watch because of like A, the vantage point that I had, and then B, just being like thinking about this. And then so obviously I sent a tweet being like, this is a wild place to put media. And I will say, like, when I went to what was the last pay-per-view I went to? All Out in Chicago. We had like the best seats that I've ever got at an AEW show. But they do kind of have a habit of putting like the media near the empty seats, which I always think is like a really just strange, bad idea, because then when someone like me or anyone is like taking photos, a lot of the time like the photos have like empty seats in it. And for me, where I was sat, like any photo I would have taken would have had the big black curtain in it that obscured like the entrance ramp. So I was just like, this is crazy. So I sent the tweet. Now, whether or not that was the right thing to do, I think that can be debated. But for me, I felt like you have to give an honest assessment of where, like, what you're getting, what you're seeing from a show. So I did it, right? Do I regret sending the tweet? No, but at the same time, I think that just a lot of attention I didn't want came from it. So anyway, like I sent the tweet, that's popping off. And so yeah, that's like popping off. And I will say, so I saw like a lot of replies, like, you know, troll replies that were like, basically, you, Stephanie, got that seat because like you're shit, you're like a nobody, you only have however many followers, like you don't do anything, no one cares about you, whatever, right? And it was not just me that had this bad seat, and I wasn't just talking about me. Like, as I said, Shawn Moxley's a couple of seats down from me. I remember I talked to him. He came up and said hi to me, and I remember asking him, what did Christian do, right? Because after the first match, I heard Christian's music, but I never saw him. So I had no idea about that whole bit with Kip and the pen until I listened to reviews and eventually watched the show myself, right? So, but he didn't know what Christian did either. Like, he couldn't see it. And you could tell from other people in the media's tweets that they pictures that they had these same seats. Now, I don't know if any of them expressed this on social media or told anyone or anything like that. Like that's their personal choice, right? But I'm just saying that it wasn't a case of AEW doing like a tier system or a class system of media, whereas in which I was on the bottom rung and was therefore given the seat, right? That wasn't what happened. So I sent the tweet, and then it was when MVP did his bit, and I love MVP a lot. And I've been really waiting for him to debut on AEW. And he came out, and the way he came out was like he started talking before he came on the stage, right? And I could hear the people cheering, and I had no idea who it was. And I heard other people in the media row being like, who is it? And it was only when he said that he was MVP that we knew who it was, right? And before that, I had taken a photo where I said like my view of Prince Nana, which was like nothing, couldn't see Prince Nana at all, just the black sheet. And then MVP comes out, and I was thinking like, this is really ridiculous, right? Because you have on this show a debut happening, and surely you want people that you're comping seats to in the media to be excited about this and talking about it. And none of us saw MVP. Like we couldn't see him. So then I sent a text to someone in AEW, and I just basically said like, these seats are a disgrace. Like we can't, none of us could see MVP. We're beside all these empty seats. There's a big black curtain in front of us. And I don't know if it was the tweet or the text that led to me getting moved, because it felt like they were already on their way to move me before I sent the text. But anyway, someone from AEW came and got me and ended up moving me to the floor. And I got to the floor just before the main event started, right? And I did say to that person, like, you know, by the way, it's, you know, not just me, because there were other people I talked to in this section as well, people that were taking photos and stuff that couldn't do that. So when I got moved to the floor, I did like a follow-up tweet saying that AEW had corrected this and had moved me to like a much better seat. And that is really good that they recognized the problem and corrected it. Awesome, like grateful for that. But I think I have to probably like explain and say that when I'm covering wrestling and what I want to do, like I always do, like want to be honest, right? And there's no honest thing I could have said about MVP other than that I didn't see him. And I also, this is not like the first time I've pointed out flaws when it comes to things with AEW and their really like how they go about their media strategy and how they kind of just do like a lot of own goals compared to, you know, WWE. Like, for example, I wrote about Money in the Bank versus Forbidden Door and stuff like that. And it's like these little, whether you would call them mistakes or just oversights that really add up. So I did think it was worth saying and worth having a conversation about, because this is, I think, the third year that they run Arthur Ashe. So to think that they didn't have a look at how this was set up, and Arthur Ashe has media boxes too. There were like these little media boxes that would have been like straight on to the ring that they just weren't using. But to 3 years in to like not have, you know, like the layout of how they're going to do it, and then think about where to place these people that you want to cover your show is a really big oversight. But I think when you put that out there on Twitter, people that have no comprehension of how things work when it comes to like media, PR, and all that kind of stuff, like they just think you're being an entitled bitch. And you can think that if you want. I don't think that it's, I'm not saying, I want like a front row ticket or anything like that. If I wanted a front row ticket, I would have ways to get that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you should at least put these people in a place where they're able to fulfill their end of the bargain of covering the show, and maybe even giving you some positive coverage, and not this, right? But when it comes to like what people were saying back to me, and me just fucking muting the thread and like deleting the Twitter app from my phone, I just thought that I feel like there's a lot of people that were basically saying like, you don't deserve anything, you're like worthless, you're like a content creator, you have like really few followers, who are you? Always who are you? That kind of thing. And I don't actually think I'm doing anything great. I actually do think that what I do is pretty worthless, like, to be honest. What I'm trying to do through my writing is to write about wrestling in the way I want to write about it, with some consciousness. I'm trying to do that, and I think that I have done that with my writing, right? And that's not for everyone. And then Dynamite, I, as a whole, like, love the show, so that's why I want to come on here and talk about Dynamite every week. And as I've said before, like, this is, I don't review Raw or SmackDown every week. I review Dynamite because Dynamite's the show that gets me thinking, that gets me going, that gets me wanting to talk. Is there any value in anything I do? Like, I don't think so, really, and I wish there was. And I'm in a position where I think, a lot of you probably know that I worked for Digital Spy. They cut wrestling, so I'm out here doing things on my own, and it's about building not just like me as a brand or like what I want to do, but the criticism of me being like a worthless, like, fake media member or whatever. I don't think I'm John Pollock. I don't think I'm Sean Hassab. I don't think I'm Denise. I don't think I'm anyone of note at all. But I do think I'm someone that is willing to say these things, even if it just causes me shit that I don't want. Because honestly, all I ever wanted to do in wrestling was be a nice, like, interviewer lady and not have any of this shit. And I, on Thursday, so after Dynamite, I just like felt really shitty, and I came back to Toronto, and like I had a really, really bad experience when I landed in Toronto. That's not something to get into on a Dynamite review, but it was like really like shook me up. And then I'm reading this stuff on Twitter and whatever, and I was just like, I just can't deal right now. And then when I finally got home, like back to my room and back to my sleeping cat, my way to unwind was I was like, okay, I'm going to put on the Dynamite review from Voices of Wrestling, like from Joe Lanza himself, that I subscribe to on Patreon. And this is a show that I listen to every week, right? And that I actually pay to listen to. And I'm sat there like in bed with the lights off, like trying to like shut out the entire world. And this show opens with 20 minutes of Joe Lanza talking about my seat situation. And I will say that that Joe didn't say anything bad about me personally, right? And I listened to a lot of like what Lanza does, and I've been listening to him for years. And when it comes to stuff about the media, like he did a podcast before with David Bixenspan about the media, like I agree with all of his points. And he, as I said, like didn't say anything bad about me. I don't actually know what Joe Lanza thinks about me, but he probably like, you know, he's not gonna hold me in any high esteem, right? I know that. But and the way he spoke about it was exactly how I thought he would speak about it. Someone who is like rational, savvy, talking about actual business, where, you know, he just said like, yeah, no one should have got these seats, and it was an own goal for AEW to put the media in these seats. And he said, you know, like, this isn't about Stephanie Chase. This isn't about whatever you think about Stephanie Chase. And I'm just sitting there, like, hearing my name mentioned over and over again on this podcast that I listen to weekly, being like, like I kind of freaks me out when I hear people talking about me. That like I had this earlier in the year. I found like some video on YouTube where these guys were talking about something I said, and they were just like I don't know who the fuck Stephanie Chase is, but like Stephanie Chase, it sounds like for me, like when I hear people say my name, like it freaks me out. So, and that's not about like anything Joe Lanza said. As I said, like I would respect everything he said, and he was correct, and he basically agreed with me, but it felt like he was talking to people that just like weren't getting it and having a go at me because of whatever perception they have of me or whatever they think of my usefulness, worth or whatever. But at the end of the day, this whole game, unfortunately, in the media is about how many people know your name, how many followers you have. So when you say something and you're not at the top, it just becomes that everything's about how insignificant you are and why are you even having this conversation, when at the end of the day, like, am I that insignificant if they fucking move me? And as I heard Joe said, like, if you think I was wrong, well, they corrected the mistake, so I obviously wasn't, basically something like that. But anyway, if you have any questions, you can ask me, and tomorrow I'm doing a live show anyway. But I just wanted to put like that all out there because I just felt like the whole thing got really out of hand, and I was just reading a lot of things about myself that just made me uncomfortable and whatever, and different like perceptions people might have of me. But I will say on a final point that if you think that I am just a content creator, some girl that like takes pictures or talks on YouTube to not very many people, my entire background is journalism. I'm not even being a twat, but I'm more qualified as a journalist than I would say 99% of people in wrestling media. I've worked for national newspapers, magazines. I've worked in music, film, TV, have experience with PR people and all those settings. I've done all of that, right? Like that's my entire background. It's not just that I one day like turned on a camera, decided to talk about Dynamite and called myself a journalist. Like that's not my background. So when I have specific things that I'm saying and complaints about PR, it's or stuff that is done in the like treatment of the media by companies or whatever like that, it's not me just comparing AEW to WWE, right? It's me comparing AEW to different other experiences that I've had being part of the media with companies, with PR, whether it be in music or film or fashion or art, all of those that I have, right? So anyway, I am sorry that I took up so much time of this Dynamite review talking about that, but I just felt like I needed to explain myself to my lovely audience. And thank you so much for the comments. Thank you so much. It really, yeah, I feel like I'm not going to put them on the screen because it feels like egotistical or something, but I really appreciate Fernando, Maria, Ashley for the stuff that you're saying. So let's get into Dynamite Grand Slam. So I watched this yesterday. And let's start talking about Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson. This match was what sold me on going to Grand Slam. I think that we've talked before previous weeks about the build. I do feel like it was kind of rushed and they weren't exactly telling like the real story or the story that could have been told. But I think like the real story wouldn't have fit in what's currently going on with Bryan Danielson, because watch the last of McGuinness and you know that like Nigel is the baby face. And I was very hyped for this. I spent the day before the show listening to like the excellent Grapple Patreon Nigel mixtape that they did. And if you are even further intrigued by Nigel McGuinness after seeing this match, I go sign up to Grapple's Patreon and you can hear all about his history with Bryan and just his history in general. But my God, if they had explained something like that properly on AEW TV, I think this match would have had people even more invested. But anyway, I thought the match was really, really good. Nigel hasn't wrestled other than his spot at Wembley in like 15 years. And like taking that into account, taking his age into account, he's nearly 50. I thought he did an incredible performance. There was every chance he could have gone out there and flopped or been embarrassing, and it could have been a real like, oh, leave the memories alone, like a real kind of stain on the legacy of him as a wrestler, and specifically his feud with Bryan. But it wasn't. Bryan, maybe the best wrestler ever. He's able to cover up for anything that Nigel couldn't do. And I thought like in the ring, they did a really good job of conveying the emotion and what Nigel wanted to do. And I thought the finish it felt a little bit like out of nowhere. I think I wanted something bigger, but Nigel, I've seen people debate whether Nigel said fuck you or thank you at the end. I really believe he said thank you. And that was a nice little touch. So I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was really, really good when you take all of that stuff into account. I do wish the booking had been better. I do wish the whole like lead up to it had been better. But Nigel McGuinness returning to the ring to have that match with Bryan Danielson is a wonderful thing. And when I was watching The Last of McGuinness a couple of days before the show, just in preparation, that's like one of the hardest documentaries to watch because it's so raw. Like this is someone putting themselves out there at like the worst time in their lives and exposing themselves completely. Like he's like completely naked emotionally in that documentary. And it's incredible to watch, knowing what would happen to him with being able to wrestle first at Wembley and the Grand Slam. And there's a really good message in there of like you never know what's around the corner, and Nigel would have never known what was coming, right? And that's amazing, and it's great that he got to do that. So I really love that. What happened after I thought was really not good, and a really good example of the place that AEW is currently in of the unevenness of tone that I really think they need to pull themselves out of, because it just drags down the product. So I think I told you guys on my last show how I would have done the aftermath of this match. And I honestly think my booking was way better than whoever came up with this garbage that we got at the end. So after this match that was emotional, these two rivals getting in the ring together after like over a decade, Nigel saying thank you, or even if he said fuck you, all of that, Christian's music hits, and Christian comes out with his little contract, his money in the bank briefcase, basically, like he's going to take a shot at Bryan, and then Kip Sabian steals his pen. And then you see Pac and Claudio backstage. Pac and Claudio, who I could actually see from my seats. I could see them, but I couldn't see Christian and Kip Sabian. So I was very confused about what went on and why Pac and Claudio were there. But I thought that this was so silly. It was silly Billy business, as I like to say. My booking would have been that Christian came out there to try and take his shot at Bryan, and that Nigel stopped him, because after everything, after all the hatred, after all the resentment, after everything that Nigel went through with Bryan, because he got that match with Bryan, because he got one more chance with Bryan, Bryan earned his respect. Well, he would always have respected Bryan, but he was able to show that, and Nigel basically intervened so that Bryan wouldn't lose his title in that way. Something like that, I think, would have been way better than this nonsense. Like the Christian having this money in the bank contract, let's basically call it that, is silly anyway, and so not AEW, because you don't have to do everything WWE does. You should do stuff that WWE doesn't do. You should not follow their tropes. But then this, like, oh, my pen got stolen, so I can't do it. Like, no, I get that Kip Sabian, I'm sure, is a very nice guy and was around during the pandemic, there for Tony during the pandemic, and Tony likes to reward people that were loyal then, but he's not someone that should be anywhere near a main event program. Basically, he's not. So I thought this was a really, really bad ending. I'm going to pause for 1 sec while I get my phone charger, because it's on 1%. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now you all know I'm using Grapple StreamYard. So yeah, that just sucked to me. That just really sucked and really put like a kind of damper on what had been such a good match. This is just such a problem with AEW. They're doing this stuff where I think AEW could get you emotionally invested in a way that, to me, WWE is still not able to do. Like Hangman, Swerve, Bryan Danielson's amazing journey to the title and his career potentially coming to an end. Jon Moxley being this violent maniac, all this stuff. And then they just have this silliness like sprinkled in where I'm like, please just stop this tone shift. And to have that tone shift happen in that match, like contained within one segment, I just thought was really bad. The next thing I shall talk about is the final match, which was between Jon Moxley and Darby Allin, where Jon Moxley defeated Darby to take his title shot. Jon just basically beat the shit out of Darby. So this is the first match that Moxley has had since coming back in this character, this iteration of Jon Moxley. I did get to see this one up close. Moxley, he has an aura. Very cool. Marina Shafir as well. But I know that the kind of theories and stuff is right now that Darby is going to get the title soon, like within the next couple of months and stuff. But I mean, he really took a kicking here. He really, really did. And it's a kicking that he kind of brought on himself by giving up his title shot. And I know a lot of people are divided on whether or not that was good storytelling. But I did enjoy the match, I will say that. And in the post-match angle, we had Bryan Danielson come out, like, attack Moxley. He choked him with a tie, like a callback to what he did to Justin Roberts to get fired from WWE that time. And I thought that was really, really good. But I have to say, and I know that I like rag on this guy all the time, but when I saw fucking Alex Abrahantes there, this is another example of the tone thing, because Private Party and Commander, we've seen them being, attacked so many times by Moxley and his gang. And I don't have a problem with them, but Abrahantes is so goofy, and so low rent, and just has no redeeming qualities to me, like none at all. I don't know why he's under contract. That him just there with his mannerisms and all that just dragged it down for me. Like we don't need him anywhere near Bryan Danielson or anywhere near Jon Moxley. We saw Marina attack him the week before. He should have never been able to recover from that. Like, that guy, just get him out of all of this. Like, yeah, just not for me. Okay, I guess those were the two main storyline points. Where are we going next? Well, Moxley versus Bryan at Wrestle Dream in Tacoma, Washington. I feel like Moxley has to win that. You can't beat Moxley with this new character, but I feel like it's too soon to end Bryan. I would rather him keep the title until World's End. So I am actually intrigued by this and how they're going to do it, and why they're doing it in this way. So we'll see. The next, I think it's 2 weeks of Dynamite before Wrestle Dream. It's going to be really interesting to see what kind of story they should tell. We also had on this show, okay, the second match was Hook defeating Roderick Strong, which was just a fine match where Roddy carried him, and he then gave up the FTW title. He gave it back to his dad, Taz, who had a tear in his eye. He retired the championship. Match was fine. I think all I have to say, and this is kind of just a bit of an autopsy on Hook, I think I've said before that I don't think he's progressed at the level he should have, given how long he's been at this now. And there's rumors that his contract's coming up, and there are some people that I think should go to NXT, and I think that can flourish there, right? And Hook is not someone that I am like dead certain on would be a success in NXT. Like, I'm very certain that Garcia would be a success in NXT. Hook, I'm not so sure of, but one thing I am sure of is that Hook, whatever the training is, the training schedule that they're doing with Hook is not working for him. He really got even more exposed than usual when he had the feud with Jericho. I think because that was such a long feud, and I think that stripped Hook of so much of his aura. It's good that he's given up the FTW championship, because this was real, like, albatross around his neck that he needed to just, it was like a security blanket for him. Everything he did had to be about this title, because, I mean, look at it. He lost it to Jericho, won it back to Jericho, and then ended up back in a feud over the title again with Roddy, and it was just like this cycle that kept repeating. So he definitely had to get rid of that championship, and it made me think of at the Wembley press conference when a reporter asked a question about the FTW championship, and I think they phrased it kind of badly, where they were like, oh, it was kind of brought in as a like joke title. But I knew exactly what they meant. Like, Tony went off on this guy about the importance of the FTW championship. And some disagreement on some of the stuff that Tony said and how he was presenting it. And then look at how he presents the title on his TV. But obviously this meant a lot to Taz. But I just felt like, where do we go from here with Hook? Because, yeah, like Fernando said in the chat, Dom and Jack have progressed more. Jack Perry is a way better wrestler than Hook. And Dominic Mysterio is a way better character. Dominic Mysterio was not good when he started, but the way that he fully embraced what he was given, no matter what it was, and learned to be such a great heel is commendable. Hook can't talk, whether it be in promos or whether he's himself. Some of the promos he did during the Jericho feud were awful, and really made him look bad. I've said before, the Wembley press conference where Tony brought him out to talk, I never would have done that to the kid. He was not capable of carrying a sentence. And he, I think, went from someone that had this aura and this charisma to, like, honestly, if Hook approached you in a bar and asked to buy you a drink, you'd have to be extremely shallow to accept his offer, because I don't think that there's anything going on upstairs, and certainly not in a way that he can convey on TV or on video. I think I'd cut my losses with this guy, but if he wants to go try it in the Performance Center and see if WWE can work some magic on him, then go for it. But I don't have as much faith that he's going to become the next big thing in the way that I have a fuck ton of faith in Daniel Garcia, and I have faith in Ricky Starks too. So one sec, I need to open my door because my cat desperately wants out. I think she's hungry. Okay, girl. Okay. Next thing to talk about has to be the Young Bucks defeating Ospreay and Fletcher. This match I thought was really great. People give this match stunning reviews. I think that there was a lot happening in it. I think there was probably too many near falls, but I get the style of match they were going for. I thought this was the Young Bucks seeming the most engaged and tuned in, turned on than they have in a really long time. So it's good to see them actually feel like they want to wrestle and like want to do a match. So I'm not fully on the train of the Young Bucks are back. It may just have been the setting and the opponents, but it was a really, really good match. So we had Don Callis. He handed a screwdriver to Kyle, and then Kyle was going to use the screwdriver, and Will Ospreay cut him off, and he showed referee Rick Knox, who's not a good referee, second worst in the promotion, the weapon, and said that Callis to go away, and then Ospreay got hit with the title belt, and then the BT trigger happened, victory. So there's all this like smalls in the end. I think we're leading to maybe dissension, breakup between Will and Kyle, or maybe even just Kyle and Don Callis. Will telling Kyle to like finally get away from this man, because it is very odd that Don Callis is this evil, hated figure, and yet Kyle Fletcher is still attaching himself to him, and I guess it all came out in this match. But very, very good match. And I think another thing I haven't mentioned yet is I heard some people say like the crowd weren't good, and that must have been to do with the miking, because the crowd were really good in the building and they were really up for all these matches. So if it wasn't loud on TV, like that's really unfortunate, because in the building it was loud. It was. So I think the final main point from Dynamite, unless I'm forgetting something, I don't have anything to say about Mariah May and Yuka. I thought that was a dud, honestly, and they clearly had all their time cut as well. What other matches were there on it? That was it, right? Yeah. Of course, is the debut of MVP. And yes, I love MVP. Now, when I finally got a look at him, he looked incredible. He has charisma. He has a swagger. And I loved how they did his introduction. I do wish he like played some music or something, but this, Prince Nana and Swerve have always been kind of that they're quite opposites, right? Swerve is so intense and so serious, and then you have Prince Nana doing his dance and with his coffee, and I've always thought that like it worked really well. Like I love that contrast. I love how they go together. But what better way to really point out like how strange this partnership is and how it shouldn't work than bringing in MVP to say the things that he did to Prince Nana. He was amazing. He is such a great talker. He was so underutilized at the end of his time with WWE, and he ended up leaving, not renewing his contract, whatever happened. This is going to be really good, I think, what they're going to do with Swerve, MVP, and Nana. I guess the question is, who else comes in? Do we get Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin? Do we get a Hurt Business reunion? The way I've always felt is I probably wouldn't hire Shelton. And I'm not sure I would hire Bobby Lashley just because of the bloatedness of the roster of AEW and the extreme bloat of ex-WWE guys. My question would be where does he fit in? What's the spot? Whose spot is he taking? And AEW is so desperately in need of just focusing and pushing their guys. And I count Swerve as one of their guys. Other guys need that Swerve push because what they did for Swerve the past year has been incredible. So I'm not like 100% bring in Bobby Lashley, but if they've got a place that fits within this storyline and maybe it's short term, I think that would work. But MVP is a guy that I would 1,000,000% give a contract to. I think he's amazing, and I think that he was so good in this spot, and him and Nana are going to be great together, and I can't wait till Swerve gets involved and Swerve promos up against MVP. That's going to be so good. So I'm so happy that MVP is in AEW. I'm so excited, and I think I can't wait to see what he does next week. Like genuinely, this is the first signing in a long time that has actually got me excited because I mean I could care less about Ricochet, honestly. But MVP, I really like. I'm gonna now say some quick things about Collision because I was there. I put Collision on last night while I was getting ready to go out, and I was watching on Thriller, and I don't know what went wrong with the Thriller feed, but it started with like a black screen saying no signal from the building for ages, and then we had like it come up like segment 1 and 2, like they did not get this tape properly to Thriller. It was all a bit, unfortunately, like typical AEW not being able to do things right. Honestly, like that's what it was. But the way they showed it on TV was not how it was taped. So Jack Perry's open challenge, which I didn't see and I still haven't seen, that was taped before Dynamite. Jack Perry and Minoru Suzuki, that was taped before Dynamite, so I never saw that. And the first match taped on Collision was the Learning Tree match. So it actually opened with Saraya and Jimmy Hayter. I don't have anything to say about this, but I will say a quick thing about Saraya, which I wanted to say earlier, that I planned on saying earlier when I was talking about my whole drama, that when I was saying the things about, like, you know, what I want to do and like writing and everything, a lot of you will have seen on Twitter, I had been saying a lot about Soraya and Ronnie Raddick and their transphobia, their bullying, a lot of their despicable behavior on social media, and how AEW are just like letting it fly, basically endorsing Ronnie Raddick by having his music as Soraya's entrance music. And you know, a lot of people would tell me that Soraya will not get her contract renewed, and they were saying that because basically she's objectively been terrible and a terrible signing by AEW. She's brought nothing to the company. So a lot of people were kind of doing the whole, well, you know, we'll be rid of her in a month, and then she'll be Triple H's problem. You know, Triple H can deal with her bullying people, being transphobic, and all of that. And I had twice brought the whole Ronnie Raddick thing to AEW's attention. Once was before Wembley, it was before Wembley, when he was going off on AEW fans after the Cardiff Dynamite, and basically calling them the R slur and all sorts. And, you know, he likes to specifically pick on non-binary people. Brought that to their attention. And then she does the promo after Wembley on the post show, where she is using this tension with the community in her character, because she specifically says they, them, because I'm inclusive, like all that stuff. And I don't know if I've ever revealed this publicly, but I ended up writing a quite lengthy, like, letter, basically, like, addressed to Tony Khan, pointing out these issues and the hurt that was causing, and basically giving a history of Ronnie's, not just transphobia, but, you know, his constant use of the R slur, racism, homophobia, all these things, and how it relates to like the stuff that Soraya is doing, and why you have so many fans in the LGBTQIA plus community who are upset, why you have fans that are bringing trans pride flags to AEW, and why that this endorsement of Raddick should not be allowed to happen, and why it's something that they need to address. So I don't have a direct address for Tony Khan, so I sent it to someone else in the company, and asked them to send it to Tony, and I did not get any kind of response. So over a week later, I saw the person I sent it to again, and I basically said, you know, did you send that to Tony? Like, and I said that I think it's very bad form that I didn't hear anything back, because if someone's taken the time to do something, this was a very well written, laid out letter that wasn't, you know, just like an attack on Soraya and Ronnie Raddick. It was a full explanation where nothing I said was any kind of an allegation. It was all fact and all reference and stuff like that. And so I said, like, it's bad form if someone's taken the time to do that. It's bad form to not acknowledge it at all. And they were basically like, noted, but you can't just say something to Tony Khan. Like, there's channels it has to go through. You can't just say something to Tony Khan. And I did say back that that's very funny, because Tony Khan himself likes to slide into the DMs of male media members, male journalists. When they say something about AEW, he will slide in there to like defend himself or have a conversation or have a dialogue about it. But he does have a history of not acknowledging women in that way, not acknowledging women working within the media on anywhere the same level as any guy. And I have seen messages sent by Tony Khan to men. So anyway, nothing came of the whole Soraya Ronnie thing. And then I find out that Ronnie, I think, seems to have deleted his Twitter, and Soraya's signed a new contract. And I do think those two things are related. And I think that's just their way of getting away with never acknowledging the hurt caused by their use of Soraya and Ronnie Raddick, is just to be like, Ronnie, maybe you should stay off social media. It's hurting Soraya. And if you do that, we can pretend that none of this ever happened and just continue on. And yeah. And I think that it's a fucking waste of money to give Soraya a new contract. She hasn't performed in any way where she's worthy of being employed by that company. But Tony did it. And I think it's all very sneaky when it comes to Ronnie and to Soraya, and how they protected her and shielded her from criticism and just like buried their heads in the sand about it. I think it's bad form, and I hope that I was going to say I hope she's learned her lesson, but I don't think she's even aware that there's a lesson to be learned. I think she'll probably continue bullying people, and it will continue to not be a thing. But anyway, didn't watch Soraya's match, but I just wanted to say that because I think it really relates to what I was saying earlier about feeling like the stuff that I do isn't important. And when you get to something like that issue with Soraya and Ronnie, and how it was never addressed, never resolved, nothing. I made zero difference with anything I tried. And it really, really is disheartening, and really makes you just be like, what, like, why am I doing all this? I'd have a much easier life if I just shut my mouth and clapped and cheered at everything AEW and WWE did. It was just like, it's all brilliant. What else happened on Collision? Okay, so you had the Learning Tree match, Big Bill, Brian Keith, and Jericho defeating the Conglomeration, with Kyle, Mark Briscoe, and Orange Cassidy. It seems like they're going to switch Jericho's feud from Orange Cassidy to Mark Briscoe, so we'll see how this goes. I thought this match was okay, just like a plunder match. And yeah, it was fine. I don't really have anything to say about it. You're either sick of these two factions, or at least one of them, or you're not. But it wasn't any kind of like great match, or it wasn't a terrible match either. I did not see Brody King defeating Action Andretti, whether it was on TV or live. And I didn't see the Jack Perry one either. And the other thing, I think the last thing I'm going to talk about is the MXM segment. Man, I thought this is one of the worst things AEW has ever committed to television. And I was sitting watching this live, and you have to bear in mind that they taped Dynamite then Collision. So we're getting close to midnight and they come out. Fucking awful. I'm not a fan of meme teams, comedy teams, whatever. MXM Collection to me like are just bad. It's a bad gimmick. It's a joke gimmick. It's a 2000 era WWE gimmick. It's a Vince has really lost his mind gimmick. And then this whole thing where like there's this person under the sheet, and oh my god, it's Billy Gunn in a thong and sheer shorts, which I did not need to see. That was right in front of me. So incredibly stupid, so badly written, so lacking value. You had so many people leaving Collision at various points. One sec. You had mass exoduses from Collision at various points. I saw more than one person fast asleep during Collision. And you just can't blame people for not wanting to stick around for it, because you're getting that late in tonight. It's a weekday. There's transport, stuff like that to think of. And just to subject us to this utter shit, I don't know why you would do that. And then to see it on TV, it's just... It reminded me of the stuff that happened in AEW in the tail end of 2019 that caused Tony Khan to take the book. All the bad, was it Dark Order stuff, or Brandy and her little goth collection. And it's like, someone has to take the pen from whoever wrote this. Really, really terrible. Not funny, not clever, not productive. Nothing. It was just awful, and I was just watching it open mouth, like, am I at an AEW show? Like, I don't even think NXT would put that on. I don't even think NXT 2.0 would put that on. Hideous stuff. But that's really it. That's really all I have to say. I've talked for over an hour, and the first 20 minutes were probably a snooze fest for most of you watching. But I'm glad I got to talk about AEW Grand Slam, keeping up my Dynamite reviews. Oh, and now my camera's died, so I guess this is a great time to end it. Once I finish this, I'm going to put up the link to my live show tomorrow, which is going to be a Ask Steph, where you can ask me anything about wrestling or about whatever. I did one of those last month. It's something that I want to do once a month. So please join me for that. Get your questions ready. If you can't watch live, once I set the stream, just put questions in the chat. And if no one asks me any questions, it's me. So I'll find things to rant/talk about. So yeah. But I want to do those just ask me anything once a month things, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about things that like aren't just AEW Dynamite and whatever. And you guys know me, I will probably answer fucking anything, because that's my problem, isn't it? I can't just keep my mouth shut and be a nice little girl. So join me for that. But thank you guys so much for watching today, because I know it was at a unusual/difficult time, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate everyone that has said nice things to me over the past couple of days. I don't know if I'm ever going to be someone that tweets a lot anymore, but you can always find me on Instagram at stephaniemchase. I need to start using Threads. I'm stephaniemchase on that too. I'll be writing quite a bit on Substack next week, and I'll be using there's a Substack feature where you can just write notes of what's on your mind. I'm going to be using that as well. So if you don't see me on Twitter again, you have other places where you can find me. You can always find me here on YouTube. But I really, really appreciate everyone watching. Thank you guys so much. And I will hopefully see a lot of you tomorrow. Bye.